Hey folks, Justin from Untitled Tactics. Today we're here to talk about what I believe is Australia's #1 lure colour. So that's a pretty big claim. What is that claim based on? Well, I've been catching stacks of fish on it. I've also had heaps of feedback from the pro anglers about this colour is amazing, why is it catching all times of year, all watercolours, and also lots of messages from you guys out there saying, man, this colour is the bomb, I'm whacking the fish on it. Freshwater, saltwater, lots of different species. That, however, is probably not enough. You know, that's the claim that we all make. This lure is amazing, this lure catches everything. So let's have a look at the science behind why this colour is so effective, have a look at it in the water, and have a look at it also under UV light. So, UV light, a lot of people talk about it, it's and ahed about a bit, but it's not just about UV light, it's also about light in general and how our eyes work. So, even though we're on the land and we're breathing air and fish are in the water, their eyes are very similar to ours in many ways. So we both have lens-covered eyes, lens-covered retinas, and also our eyes both have cone cells in there that help us to see. So basically we have rod cells and we have cone cells. So rod cells allow us to perceive contrast in low light conditions, and cone cells are the cells that allow us to see colour. So for humans, we see about 10% of our cone cells are dedicated to blue light, so not a lot of dedication towards that light. Our main light sensitive cones are based on red and green light, and you'll find that varying across people, you'll have a mix of the proportion of red and green cone cells in our eyes. Even in people that both have excellent colour vision, that will vary. So fish, on the other hand, they have, depending on species, location, the environment they live in and hunt in and all of that sort of thing, their cone cells vary in proportion as well across that blue, green and red. And that's why there are so many different lure colours and so many different successful lure colours. You know, if a fish's eye is dialed into a particular prey species or a particular light level or murky water or light level when they hunt at night or day, that will show in the proportion of red, green and blue cone cells that are in their eye. And that's why you'll find some species love a pink lure or some species love a black lure. Different colours will work often for different species depending on the environment, the forage, that sort of thing. It will also depend on the light levels, the murkiness of the water, all different variables that make a certain colour work at a certain time. So lure colour is something that we need to think about. But there's also another spanner thrown into the mix when it comes to fish. There's many different species out there, and there's a lot of species that have a fourth cone cell in their eyes, and that cell detects UV light. So over the years, it's shown that species have actually evolved to better detect UV light depending on the environment that they live in and the food that they're feeding on. And so scientists say that UV light vision in fish may be for a variety of different reasons. So it could be for foraging, it could be for communication, and it could also be for finding the right mate when it comes to spawning time. So fish actually exhibiting UV triggers that other fish can see so they can find the right mate at spawning time. So there's a lot of reasons why UV triggers are used among fish, and also one of the main ones is foraging potentially, which for us is the important one because that's why we put different UV into lures. For us as humans, not so important. We do not see ultraviolet light. So ultraviolet stands for beyond violet, and as we said before, 10% of our cone cells are actually devoted to blue type of light, and then beyond violet, light becomes invisible to us. So ultraviolet, beyond violet, we don't see it, but it is important for fish in a lot of different ways, and that's why we use it in different substances in lures to create that UV reaction. So how do we see how a particular substance or lure reacts under UV light? Generally we'll use a black light torch. So this emits UVA, and it also diminishes a lot of existing visible light. So what that does is it removes the visible light and purely focuses on that UVA. And what that does is if there's UV reactive substance in that, it will glow, or it shows us the fluorescence, the reaction that we get from that UV light on that plastic. So that's why you'll find a lot of tackle stores have a black light torch, and anglers actually buy them themselves as well to check out how a plastic reacts under UV light, because as we've said, Many species have that fourth cone type in their eyes that allows them to see UV light to varying degrees. And I'll tell you what, you wouldn't have to have too many UV cone cells to see how that motor oil pops under UV light. So that's a dynamite colour, but that's not our colour we've been slaying it with lately, and we will get to that. But let's first have a look at how a couple of other different colours react under UV light. So I've got a few different colours here, and we're going to see how these different colours fluoresce or glow under UV light, and why this level of UV might be important to us. So we've spoken about motor oil a lot, and motor oil is a colour that does glow or fluoresce extremely bright. So a very popular one in dirty water, dark days, those sorts of things where you really want that UV pop. But a lot of the time it's not all about UV. You might want a bit more subtle UV. So something like our Houdini plastic, it's got a lot of fleck and glitter in there as well. So it still fluoresces, still glows under UV light, still reacts with that UV light, but not as hardcore. So for some species or in different water clarities, different lights, this may be a preferred bait fish profile or profile for them to eat, because you can see there it's also got all of those other natural strike triggers in there, like the black fleck and our different coloured glitters and that in there as well. So in that sort of plastic there, we're utilising that UV, but we're also taking advantage of the glitter and the fleck that's in that plastic as well to create a nice natural presentation that still has some UV pop. And then another colour again, contrasting completely, bloodworm colour. So a lot of you hands up, yeah, lots of people out there love bloodworm colour. Well, bloodworm doesn't react with UV light. It doesn't glow or fluoresce under UV light, and yet it's won tons of tournaments. It's a super popular colour for anglers. Really, really dynamite in clear water and bright days, potentially because it doesn't glow under that UV light. But it does have a lot of natural prey colours on there, and it's got a lot of fine glitters in a variety of colours that also act as strike triggers. So that's why it's important. We always say one of our things with colour is make sure you've got a few natural light coloured plastics, make sure you've got some darker silhouette plastics, and also make sure you've got a couple of fluoros in your kit as well. And that's because on the given day, depending on the bait being chased by fish, depending on how murky the water is, how bright the day is, all those variables may affect what the fish want to eat on the day. So having a variety of colours definitely helps you catch more fish, because you can try it. If it's not working, you can change it up and go again. So there's a look at a few different colours and how they react under UV light, and why we may require some plastics that really pop, and we might require some plastics that are more natural looking as well. So that brings us to what I believe is probably the deadliest soft plastic colour you can get your hands on. Lately I've had a few 20 plus flathead sessions on them, tons of bream, all sorts of species eating this, and I've also been hit up from some of our pro team guys who've just said this thing, I've tied it on the rod, I've fished the freshwater, I've fished the saltwater, and I've fished up north, or I've fished 3 different locations, same plastic, and caught a stack of different species on it. So that plastic colour is midnight oil. So midnight oil, some of you will be going, yep, I love that colour, yep. Some of you might be going, I actually haven't fished it. The key, we believe, to this plastic is its 1-2 punch. It covers both your UV, and it also really effectively covers your natural strike triggers for any species that don't see a lot or don't see UV. So midnight oil basically picked up its name because it's built on the motor oil colour. So that gives it that really, really hardcore UV pop. But if you're a fish that doesn't see UV, or you don't see a lot of UV, it still has an awesome fleck in there as well. So we worked hard on getting that fleck right, the amount of fleck, the size of the fleck, and all that sort of thing. And it's named Midnight Oil. Midnight, I don't know if you've ever been out somewhere in the boat at night time, you look up at the sky and it is absolutely just alive with stars. It is lit up like crazy, especially at midnight when there's not much else happening around the place and a lot of the lights are turned off. So that really has that lit up crazy sparkle to it, and it also has that UV pop as well. So even when you've hit this with a UV torch and it's lit up real bright, you can still see that fleck coming out of the UV as well. So under normal light, bounce it around, you can see the glitter is picking up that light. It's looking like a natural reflective strike trigger. It's looking like a scale flash that turns on those strikes. Otherwise, if you're a fish that sees hardcore UV, there's no more hardcore UV than that motor oil colour, which has been used in this Z-Man Midnight Oil Colour. In terms of models, it's there in some of the favourites. 2-inch grubs, 2.5-inch grubs, 3.5-inch grubs, so stacks of curly tails, other curly tails, 4-inch streaks curly tails and 5-inch streaks curly tails. So right from trout and brim and bass right through to snapper, mulloway, those sorts of things. Slim swims in a 2.5 and a 3-inch, and also in a 3-inch minnows for those that want that bit more bulk. That's a great all-round plastic for everything from flathead to jacks and barra and all sorts of fish as well. So there you go, that is that colour. That is Midnight Oil, the 1-2 punch, combining that hardcore UV with that natural scale flash, that sparkle that turns those fish on, gets those bites. That's the one that's been slaying it for myself, been smashing it for a lot of other anglers out there as well. If you haven't checked out Z-Man's Midnight Oil Colour, make sure you get into your local tackle shop, check it out, get stuck into a few fish. All the best, cheers.